Birth on land makes sense. Underwater, it gets weird fast. Male animals becoming mothers, epic journeys across entire oceans just to give birth, and babies entering the world in the most extreme ways imaginable. Here are the craziest ways sea creatures give birth. Number 22. Seahorses. Every seahorse you've ever seen in an aquarium was fired out of its father's stomach. The female shows up, shoves eggs into a pouch on his belly during a 10-second dance and disappears. That's her entire contribution. His pouch seals shut and starts functioning like a womb, pumping calcium, fats, and oxygen into each egg while filtering out waste. His hormones shift. His appetite dies. Scientists confirmed the pouch actively manages development in the same way a mammalian uterus would. A fish running a womb. Then the contractions hit. For up to 12 hours, his body convulses, each spasm launching fully formed seahorses into the current. Sometimes over 1,000 in a single session, translucent specks with black pinprick eyes tumbling into an ocean that wants to eat every one of them. The father doesn't recover. Sometimes, within hours, the female comes back, if the pouch is empty, and another round goes in. Some species cycle through this non-stop. No off-season. Number 21. Sand tiger shark. The most dangerous place for a sand tiger shark embryo isn't the ocean. It's its mother's womb. Females carry 6 to 9 embryos in each of their 2 uteruses. That's up to 18 potential babies. Only 2 will ever be born. Inside each uterus, the embryos develop at different rates. The biggest one in each chamber starts eating its siblings, not competing with them, eating them. Teeth develop early in sand tiger sharks, and those teeth get used on brothers and sisters before the babies ever see open water. The largest embryo hunts down and swallows every other developing shark in its uterus one by one. Scientists call it intrauterine cannibalism, and it's exactly as violent as it sounds. When all the siblings are gone, the surviving embryo moves on to unfertilized eggs floating in the uterine fluid, gobbling those down too. By the time the 2 winners finally emerge, one from each uterus, they're already over 3 feet long, muscular, and battle-tested. They've been killing since before they were born. Most predators won't touch a pup that size. Why would they? This thing has already survived a death match it didn't ask to enter. Number 20. Splashing tetra. A fish that gives birth on a leaf above the water shouldn't exist, but splashing tetras figured it out anyway. When a pair is ready to reproduce, the male scouts for the perfect leaf hanging over the river. Once he finds it, the male and female launch themselves out of the water in perfect unison, sticking to the underside of the leaf just long enough for the female to deposit her eggs. The male fertilizes them on the spot. Then they drop back into the water. The eggs stay on the leaf, above the river, out of reach of every hungry fish below. For the next couple of days, the male stays underneath and splashes water up at the eggs with his tail to keep them moist, just flicking water upward, over and over, making sure his babies don't dry out on a leaf he can't even climb onto. When the eggs finally hatch, the fry drop off the leaf and plunge into the river, entering the water for the first time as fully formed tiny fish. The parents did everything they could with a system that sounds like it was designed by someone who lost a bet. Number 19. Anacondas. Some mothers eat their own babies minutes after giving birth. Female anacondas deliver around 40 live young underwater, each one 2 feet long and wrapped in a membrane sac. The babies have seconds to tear through that sac and swim to the surface, or they drown in the same murky water their mother chose as a delivery room. She picked the thickest, darkest water she could find, so nothing could see her while she was vulnerable. 7 months without a single meal. 30% of her body weight is gone. 200 pounds of starving snake surrounded by 40 small, slow, easy targets. She doesn't hesitate. The stillborn get swallowed first, then the weak ones, then whoever didn't swim away fast enough. It's protein. It's survival. The babies that make it scatter into the vegetation within hours, already knowing how to constrict, already sensing body heat through pits on their faces, already able to unhinge their jaws and swallow something wider than themselves. They'll never see their mother again. She wouldn't recognize them if they came back. Number 18. Stingrays. Stingrays are fish that somehow figured out how to breastfeed. They don't spawn like other fish. Instead, 5 to 15 pups develop inside the mother in individual compartments, each one feeding off a yolk sac. But when that yolk runs dry, something happens that shouldn't be possible for a fish. The mother's body starts producing a rich milky fluid and pumps it directly into the uterus. The pups drink it through specialized mouth structures. Scientists call it uterine milk. The pups stay inside for up to 6 months, emerging as perfect miniature copies of their parents, roughly the size of a dinner plate, with every survival skill already loaded. They can bury themselves in sand, hunt, and whip their barbed tails at threats. The mother might choose shallow water to give her babies a head start, but that's where her involvement ends. The moment those pups hit open water, the relationship is over. Born complete, born alone. Number 17. Sea urchins. 20 million eggs explode out of a single female sea urchin at once. At the same moment, males release clouds of sperm into the water, and for a few minutes the ocean around them turns into a thick, milky, reproductive soup. Each egg is smaller than a grain of sand, invisible on its own. Together they form clouds dense enough to change the color of the water. The fertilized eggs transform into tiny swimming larvae covered in microscopic hairs that beat in coordinated waves. These larvae drift through the ocean for months, eating plankton even smaller than themselves, slowly building their spiny shells one plate at a time. Out of those 20 million, roughly 5 make it to adulthood. The rest become food for filter feeders, get crushed by pressure in deep water, or just fail to find the right patch of algae-covered rock to settle on. The parents are completely unaware that any of this happened. They released their cells into the water and moved on. 20 million attempts at life, and they'll never know if a single one worked. Number 16. Elephant seal. 88 pounds of baby comes out head first on a rocky beach while a 1,300-pound mother screams through the worst day of her life. Elephant seal pups stretch over 4 feet long at birth, and every inch of them has to squeeze through a birth canal that was never designed for comfort. The mothers haul themselves ashore weeks before delivery, dragging their massive bodies onto islands off the coasts of South America, South Africa, and Australasia. They've been carrying these pups for 7 months, and by the time labor starts, there's nothing gentle about it. The pup emerges headfirst, slick and dark, landing on cold ground surrounded by hundreds of other seals packed together on the same stretch of beach. There's no private delivery room here. Every birth happens in a crowd. The mother immediately starts nursing, and the milk is so rich in fat that the pup gains about 10 pounds a day. She feeds it for roughly a month, never eating anything herself the entire time, burning through her own blubber reserves to keep her baby growing. When the nursing period ends, she leaves, walks back into the ocean, and doesn't look back. The pup, now 3 or 4 times its birth weight, sits on the beach alone for weeks, learning to swim by itself, figuring out how to hunt by itself, surviving or not surviving on its own. Number 15. Banggai cardinal fish. The male Banggai cardinal fish carries 40 eggs in his mouth for a month without eating a single thing. After the female releases her eggs and he fertilizes them, he scoops every one of them into his jaws and seals his mouth shut. For the next 30 days, his mouth is a nursery. No food goes in, nothing comes out. He can't hunt, can't swallow, can't do anything but sit there with a mouthful of developing babies and wait. About half of those 40 eggs make it. The rest don't, and sometimes the father is the reason. Males who haven't stored enough energy before incubation starts will snack on their own offspring to keep themselves alive. It's a math problem with no good answer. Starve to death and all 40 die, or eat a few and keep the rest alive. When the surviving fry finally emerge from his mouth, the father's paternal instincts shut off like a switch. He doesn't feed them, doesn't guard them, loses all interest the second they leave his jaws. A month of starvation for babies he won't recognize an hour after they're born. Number 14. Sea dragon. Female sea dragons glue their eggs onto the male's tail. About 250 bright pink eggs get deposited onto a spongy brood patch on the underside of his tail during mating, and each one locks into place like it was designed to stick there. For the next 9 weeks, the male swims around with a tail covered in developing babies, carrying them everywhere, protecting them simply by existing. He doesn't feed them, doesn't do anything special, he just doesn't let anything eat them. When the eggs finally hatch, the babies detach and drift into open water. The father gives his tail a shake, the last few stragglers drop off, and that's it. 9 weeks of being a living nursery, and the relationship is over the second the eggs crack open. Both parents swim away. The babies are the size of eyelashes, floating alone in an ocean that eats things that small without even noticing. Number 13. Blue whale. A baby blue whale grows 1 inch per day inside its mother. After 12 months of that, it comes out tail first at 23 feet long and weighing 3 tons. That's a baby the length of a school bus and heavier than most cars. The mother pushes it to the surface immediately so it can take its first breath. Then the feeding starts. 40 gallons of milk per day. A bathtub full of milk every single day for up to 7 months. Blue whale milk is so thick with fat that it has the consistency of toothpaste. The calf gains roughly 200 pounds a day on this diet, growing at a rate that makes every other animal on the planet look like it's standing still. The mother fuels all of this while migrating thousands of miles through the open ocean, eating almost nothing herself during the nursing period. She burns through her own body mass to feed a baby that will eventually grow into the largest animal that has ever existed on Earth. Not the largest alive today, the largest ever, bigger than any dinosaur. And it started as a 3-ton newborn drinking a bathtub of milk. Number 12. Pipefish. Male pipefish are the pickiest fathers in the ocean. The female drops up to 40 eggs into a brood pouch on his belly and he fertilizes them inside. Standard procedure so far. But what happens next depends entirely on how the male feels about the mother. If he mated with a large, attractive female, he invests everything into the brood. Full resources, maximum effort. If the female was small or unimpressive by pipefish standards, the male will selectively remove embryos from his pouch. Just pluck them out and discard them. The babies from less attractive mothers get fewer resources, less oxygen, and sometimes no chance at all. If food gets scarce during the pregnancy, the father takes it further. He absorbs his own developing offspring directly through the pouch lining, converting them into nutrition for himself. He eats his own babies from the inside to keep himself alive, not out of desperation, out of preference. The brood from the attractive mate in his next cycle will get everything this one lost. Number 11. Octopus. A female octopus gets one shot at motherhood and it kills her. She mates once in her life, finds a cave or a crevice in the rocks, and lays up to 880,000 eggs in careful strings attached to the ceiling. From that moment, she doesn't leave, doesn't hunt, doesn't eat. She spends every hour flushing water over the eggs with her tentacles to keep them oxygenated, picking off parasites and debris with individual suction cups, and chasing away anything that comes near the entrance. This goes on for weeks in shallow water species. In deep-sea octopuses, it goes on for years. One species was observed guarding her eggs for 4.5 years straight in near-freezing water, the longest brooding period ever recorded for any animal. By the time the eggs hatch, the mother is barely alive, emaciated, weak, running on nothing. The babies float out of the cave as tiny translucent specks, and the mother dies shortly after, sometimes before they're all even gone. Her body drifts to the seafloor and becomes food for the same scavengers she spent months fighting off. Out of those hundreds of thousands of eggs, as few as 1% survive to adulthood. She gave everything for odds that would make a gambler walk away from the table. Number 10. Lumpsucker. A female lumpsucker drops 350,000 eggs and swims away. The male stays behind and doesn't move for 8 weeks. He attaches himself to a rock near the eggs using modified pelvic fins that evolved into suction cups. And he sits there, guarding, fanning water over the eggs to keep them oxygenated. Day after day, week after week, stuck to a rock in shallow tidal pools, while waves slam into him constantly. When the tide pulls out, he stays, exposed to air, visible to every gull and crow in the area, completely vulnerable, and he doesn't leave. 8 weeks of this. Over 1,300 hours of sitting on a rock, fanning eggs, and fighting off anything that tries to eat them. Then the eggs hatch. Thousands of tiny lumpsuckers swim out into the water, and the father detaches from his rock and disappears into deeper water without ever meeting a single one of his children. 2 months of dedication followed by immediate and permanent abandonment. Number 9. Bullhead shark. Bullhead shark eggs look like pine cones, spiral-shaped, ridged, about 4 inches long, and nothing like any egg you've ever seen. The female lays up to 16 of them per year, and each one gets the same treatment. She picks it up in her mouth, swims to a tight crevice between rocks, and wedges it in there by twisting it into place. The spiral ridges lock the egg into the crack like a screw, making it nearly impossible for currents to wash it away or predators to pull it out. Once the egg is jammed in tight, the mother leaves. No guarding, no waiting, no coming back to check. The embryo develops inside that spiral casing on its own, protected by geometry and rock. When the baby shark finally hatches, it breaks through the casing and swims out of the crevice alone. Its mother could be miles away, probably is. The most creative packaging in the ocean, delivered by a parent who puts everything into the wrapping and nothing into the follow-up. Number 8. Sea turtle. A female sea turtle finds her way back to the exact beach where she was born, using the Earth's magnetic field like a built-in compass. She might have spent 20 years swimming thousands of miles across entire oceans. But when it's time to lay eggs, she crawls onto the same sand she hatched on. The specific magnetic signature of that beach is imprinted in her brain, and she follows it back like a locked-in GPS coordinate. She digs a nest with her back flippers, drops about 110 soft, round eggs into the hole, covers them with sand, and drags herself back into the ocean. That's it. The eggs sit in warm sand for about 60 days, incubating without any parent anywhere near them. The temperature of the sand determines whether the babies are male or female. Warmer sand makes females, cooler sand makes males. When the hatchlings finally break through their shells, they dig upward through the sand, usually at night, and sprint toward the water. Seagulls, crabs, raccoons, and fish are all waiting. Out of 1,000 hatchlings, roughly one survives to become an adult. The mother laid 110 eggs, knowing the math would be brutal, because for sea turtles, quantity is the only strategy that works. Number 7. Christmas Island red crab. 50 million crabs walk across one island at the same time every year. Christmas Island, a tiny speck off the northwest coast of Australia, gets buried under a moving carpet of bright red crabs migrating from the forest to the coast to breed. They shut down roads. They cover everything. 50 million of them, all moving in the same direction, all on the same schedule. After mating near the shore, the males turn around and leave. The females stay behind. Each one carries about 100,000 eggs in a pouch on her abdomen, waiting for the exact right moment. High tide, last quarter of the moon. When those two conditions line up, millions of females wade into the surf and shake their bodies, releasing clouds of eggs into the water. The eggs hatch the instant they touch the ocean. From that second, the babies are on their own. Most will be eaten by fish, manta rays, and whale sharks before they ever see land. The survivors return to the island weeks later, crawling up the beach in their millions to start the cycle over. Number 6. Gonatus onyx squid. A mother squid bites off her own arms to make room for her babies. The Gonatus onyx carries about 3,000 eggs bundled together in her remaining arms, holding them in front of her body for 9 straight months without eating a single thing. Before spawning, she chews off her 2 feeding tentacles because they'd get in the way of the egg mass. She removes parts of her own body so she can hold her children. For 9 months, she drifts through the deep ocean between 5,000 and 7,000 feet down, too weighed down by the egg mass to swim fast enough to catch food. Not that she could eat it anyway without her feeding tentacles. She starves slowly, getting weaker by the week, burning through every calorie stored in her body. When the eggs finally hatch, tiny squid float away into the darkness. The mother, now nothing but a hollow shell of what she was, sinks to the seafloor and dies. Her body and the empty egg sac become food for scavengers. She traded her arms, her ability to eat, and eventually her life so that 3,000 babies could have a chance she'd never see. Number 5. Smalltooth sawfish. About 3% of sawfish in one Florida estuary were born without a father, no mating, no male involvement at all. The mother's egg fertilized itself. This trick is called parthenogenesis, and it's the sawfish version of a backup plan. Normally, a female carries her pups for about 12 months after mating and delivers up to 20 of them, similar to how stingrays give birth. But smalltooth sawfish are critically endangered. Habitat loss has shrunk their numbers so badly that some females go years without encountering a single male. When that happens, The female's body improvises. A polar body, a small byproduct cell left over from egg production, steps in to play the role of sperm. It fuses with the egg, provides the missing half of the genetic information, and a baby starts developing. Virgin birth. No father required. The offspring are less genetically diverse than normal sawfish, which makes them more vulnerable to disease and environmental changes down the road. But in the short term, it keeps the species from disappearing entirely. These mothers are literally willing their species into survival through biology that shouldn't be possible. Number 4. Sunfish. 300 million eggs come out of a single female sunfish. That's more than any other vertebrate on the planet. She releases them into the water. The male releases his sperm, and fertilization happens externally in the open ocean. No contact, no pairing, just two massive pancake-shaped fish dumping reproductive material into the current and hoping the math works out. The larvae that hatch are barely visible, less than 1/10 of an inch long, lighter than a paperclip. But these specks grow into 10-foot, 2,200-pound adults that look like somebody cut a normal fish in half. The growth rate is staggering. A sunfish increases its body weight 60 million times over its lifetime. If a human baby grew at the same rate, an adult would weigh about 220,000 tons, roughly the weight of a skyscraper. Out of those 300 million eggs, about 900 survive, a success rate of 0.0003%. The parents will never know which ones made it. They were gone before the eggs even fertilized. Number 3. Yellowhead jawfish. A male yellowhead jawfish fertilizes a clutch of eggs and immediately stuffs them all into his mouth. For the next several weeks he doesn't eat. His mouth is full. He lives on Caribbean coral reefs in groups of up to 70. A small fish barely 5 inches long with a mouth packed so tight with eggs that his cheeks bulge like he's storing marbles. To keep the eggs alive, he spits them out periodically, lets water rush over them, then sucks them back in. Spit, oxygenate, suck, over and over. If he swallows accidentally, if he times it wrong and the current scatters them, they're gone. The whole operation runs on a reflex that has to work perfectly every single time. When the fry finally hatch inside his mouth and swim out, something switches off in his brain. He doesn't follow them, doesn't guard them, doesn't recognize them as anything he spent weeks starving to protect. Total indifference. Weeks of hunger for babies he forgets exist the moment they leave. Number 2. Frilled shark. 3.5 years. That's how long a frilled shark stays pregnant. The longest gestation of any vertebrate on Earth. Longer than elephants, longer than whales, longer than anything else with a spine. This eel-shaped shark lives about 5,000 feet below the surface in the Atlantic and Pacific, so deep that scientists first described it in 1879 and still barely understand it today. Females are larger than males, and they need to be. The eggs develop inside the mother's body, each embryo feeding on its own yolk sac in a slow, cold process that takes years because nothing moves fast at those depths. The low temperatures and high pressure stretch development out to an almost absurd timeline. When the pups finally emerge, they're about 20 inches long, fully formed, and ready to hunt in total darkness. Unlike most fish that produce thousands of offspring and hope a few make it, frilled sharks bet everything on a small number of babies that are born tough enough to survive on their own. Quality over quantity, paid for with 3.5 years of patience in the darkest water on the planet. Number 1. Gastric brooding frog. A frog's stomach has one job: dissolve things. Acid, enzymes, and constant chemical breakdown. Nothing survives in there. Except this frog figured out how to turn hers off completely and use it as a nursery. The gastric brooding frog swallows her fertilized eggs and shuts down every digestive function in her body. No acid production, no enzyme release, nothing. The eggs themselves release chemicals that hijack her stomach lining and neutralize everything inside it, dropping the pH to something closer to plain water. For 8 weeks, tadpoles develop in an organ built to destroy them. She can't eat, can't digest, can't do anything except sit there and let her stomach do a job it was never supposed to do. When the babies are ready, they come out through her mouth, one at a time, fully formed froglets crawling up her throat, sitting on her tongue, and hopping off like it's a front porch. Some sit there for minutes, just a tiny frog perched on its mother's tongue, blinking at the world, before jumping into the undergrowth. Scientists in Queensland, Australia, discovered this species in 1973 and lost their minds. A stomach that could turn itself off. The implications were massive. Millions of people suffer from ulcers, acid reflux, and chronic digestive conditions caused by stomach acid going where it shouldn't. This frog had the answer written into its biology. Nobody got there in time. By 1983, both known species were extinct. Don't miss the videos on screen now, they're just as interesting. Catch you in the next one.